Hello everybody. Just to give you a quick recap, we took our Murray LT1000 riding lawnmower, pulled the blades out from under it, lowered the frames about 1.5 inches off the ground, adjusted our drivetrain so everything fit with the new frame location, and got a huge head start on our body work. We got the back fenders tied up, we got our drivetrain tunnel finished, and the next thing we're going to move to is our steering console and the hood. So let's get started. Alright, so we're getting my console up here. And the 2 bolts that I currently have in the floor pan also are supposed to go through the steering console. So I'm going to line those up with my holes. And now you can see that I need to take this profile out of the front right here. So I need to mark this spot and then measure the height of this tunnel and come up that same distance and cut over. The thing about that is it gets into our access panel right here. So what I'm gonna do is put a full weld all the way around this, eliminate the access panel, and I still want this to be able to bolt and unbolt from the rest of the body. So on the inside, I'll cut a couple angle iron tabs and I'll have them welded on the inside here so that I can bolt it to the floor pan and bolt it to the tunnel. So first thing I need to do is get these 2 screws out of here and remove the paint from the access panel and the console where I'm going to be welding, as well as a little spot down here to connect my ground. Once that's all cleaned up, I'll reinstall the access panel and start welding around the outside, remove the 2 screws, and fill those holes in with weld. Alright, well I laid the weld on there a little bit fast, so we got some warpage on the metal right here, but nothing a 2x4 and a little hammer can't fix. So I'm going to hammer this back out into its original shape, and then I'll get my sanding wheel and clean all this up and make it look pretty. Alright, I got my access panel all welded up. So the next thing I need to do is mark out the notch that I'm going to have to cut to fit the console around the tunnel. I have 2 bolts. I'm going to slide them through my mounting holes, and that's going to help me align the holes with the mounting points on the body pan. There we go. Now I'm going to use a Sharpie and make a mark, a vertical mark on the side, and I'll use a tape measure and measure how high up we need to come. Both my Sharpie marks look good, so now I just need to measure the height, and we can cut our notch out. And that's right at 2 7/8 inches. Here's our Sharpie mark. And you come up 2 7/8 inches. And we'll make another mark. Moment of truth, let's see how I did. Oh, that is spot on. Not bad at all. I'm gonna make a couple marks on the inside of my console where I wanna add some angle iron tabs so I can bolt and unbolt this console as needed. The first thing I'm gonna do is take a sanding wheel on my grinder and clean up all these rough cut edges, and then I'll chop off a couple pieces of angle iron, clean up some of the paint, and start welding those in place. All right, there's our console. First try, not too bad. It fit pretty well. You can see on the inside I got the tabs welded up, bolts going through them. I got 3 going into the frame at the bottom, 2 going into the tunnel at the top. Next thing I'm going to do is get my steering shaft and gears and all that back up in here. I'm going to have to shorten the shaft. I'm not sure exactly how much yet, but I definitely want to get the steering wheel down closer to the console. And after that, we're going to move on to the hood. Moving on to the steering. I got all of the original equipment over here. We got the shaft, the boot, the lid for the console, and the steering wheel. We're going to get all that mounted back up here, see how far down we can drop the steering wheel, and then we'll pull the shaft back out, trim it down, and bevel it, weld it back together, and we should be able to reinstall it with our now shorter steering wheel. So the first thing I need to do is figure out how far down into this boot the steering wheel hub goes. Once I figure that distance out, I'll take the boot back off, figure out how far down we need to trim the shaft, and then I'll trim this boot to fit back on the steering wheel and snug up against the base right here. All right. It's 1.5 inches from the base right here to where the top of our boot sits. So if I measure this, 1.5 inches puts me right at this first top rib right here. So now let's get the boot out of the way and put the steering wheel back on there and see how far we can trim it down. All right, it looks like I can cut 2 3/4 inches out of that shaft. So let's do that, and then we'll trim this boot to make it fit. All right, here's our steering shaft. We can't cut it from here towards the end, and we can't cut it from here towards the end, but this whole middle section is all open and free game. So I'm gonna make a cut somewhere right in the middle. I'll mark 2 3/4 inches, make another cut, bevel both sides, and then I'll set them inside a clean piece of angle iron to keep them aligned as I tack it together, and then put a full bead on it, clean it up with a sanding wheel, and reinstall it. there you have it. We have a steering shaft that is now 2 3/4 inches shorter than it used to be. So I'm gonna let this cool in the air for just a minute, and then I'll get it reinstalled. All right, we got about 1 1/4 inch of nub sticking up. Let's see how we did. Ooh, that's perfect. All right, so now I need to measure the distance from our Sharpie mark that we made to the top of our boot here, and that gap is gonna be what I need to cut off of the bottom for this to fit down there still. That is, oh, big surprise, 2 3/4 inches. Should have seen that one coming. All right, I'll get this trimmed down, and then we'll pull the steering wheel back off, put the boot on there, and then put it back on with the bolt. There we go, just about perfect. Let's try it out. I need to trim just a little bit more off of there, give me some more wiggle room. Now let's see. Much better. All right, let's put a bolt in it. All right, we got a steering wheel again. Very nice. Very, very nice. One thing I was worried about with the steering wheel is my knees hitting it when I'm sitting down. So I'm gonna climb up here, test fit, and see how everything works. Well, it's not that bad. It doesn't hit my knees. I can keep them spaced out. I'm not gonna be doing crazy track driving or nothing in this. It's just gonna be slow cruising. I think it's gonna be perfect. And now is the time to start working on the hood. I'm gonna go grab that, bring it over, and we'll start figuring out where it needs to sit. So, as we can see, our control arms right here are hitting right on the seam between the plastic and the metal side of the hood. So I need to figure out the best way. I may just cut a couple notches up, over, and down, and maybe use this existing notch, come up to right about halfway on this flats part, and then come down and back over. I want to keep it as tight around there as I can, but I also need to make sure there's enough room for the steering knuckle to turn, tie rods to get through, all that good stuff. So I've been thinking pretty hard about this, and I could think all day and I could do some sort of math I can take measurements and I can make precise cuts, or the faster, easier, dirtier way. I'm gonna get some painter's tape. I'm gonna draw a line with the tape of what I think looks right. I'm gonna cut it out. I'm gonna try it out. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll figure something else out. You can always find a way to fix it. All right, let's see how we did. We're still a little bit high on the front side. I was conservative on how high up I cut because I didn't want to cut too high, but it looks like we still need to come down about another 1.75 inches. Somewhere around there. So, yep, I think I do need to go halfway on this flat spot just like I had thought. All right, this might be the one. Let's find out. Nope. It's getting close though. It's getting awfully close. All right, so my front is still sitting a little bit higher than my rear, but my mounting point for the hood is actually lined up. So what I'm gonna do is raise the rear until it's level. I'm gonna measure this distance right here, and that's how far I need to still cut into this notch. So the hood will sit all the way down over the axle and give the axle a little bit of room to wiggle in there. All right, so and that looks pretty level right there. And that's right at 1.5 inches. So I still need to cut another 1.5 inches up on this. And that's gonna put me right in between these two screws. So I'll just split that distance. All right, after making that last cut, I realized I may have sacrificed one too many screws. When you pick it up, it splits. So from the factory, it doesn't have any mounting screws up here to mount the black plastic piece to the red metal side of the hood. But I have some that I'd cut off here. So I'm gonna drill 2 new holes and I'll put these screws in there and that should fix that problem. Then we'll set it up there and do our, hopefully, final test fit. Now let's see. All right, the hood looks like it's sitting nice and level. It is hitting our spindle up here. So we'll need to cut a little bit more of a notch out of this front black plastic piece on both sides. So I'll just cut it forward another 1 inch or so, and then we should be free and clear all the way around. All right, now we're getting somewhere. That doesn't look half bad. So the only thing I'm running into now is the actual mounting points for the hood down here. There we go. So the mounting points are about 3 or 4 inches too high. So I'll have to cut them, maybe flip them upside down and weld them back. That might be the best thing to do. Otherwise, I may just cut them, shift them down, and then weld them back in place. We'll see. So I decided I want to cut these notches up as far as I possibly can, because I just barely have enough room for my axle to move around, and I would like to even drop the nose down just a little bit farther to make it more original looking. So I need to move these screws as far up as I can to about here, so I can notch down to that point. And also I found a good sized crack that starts here and runs all the way down around the side of our headlight housing. So I got some scrap metal. I'm gonna cut a little piece, bend it into an L shape, and then I'll be able to put it in this corner and put 2 screws in each side, from the side and from inside the headlight housing. And that should reinforce all of this and let me finish cutting without worrying about anything breaking or falling off. All right, I got my cracked black plastic all patched up. I got my hood notched out a little bit farther. And it looks perfect. All right, I like where everything's sitting right there. I'm gonna measure from the table up to where my hood mounting points are, and then I'll take the hood back off and be able to adjust my mounting points on the mower to match that same height. So I should be able to lower the mounting points on the mower side and then just slap this hood right on there. All right, so I need my mounting point to be 5 7/8 inches off the table. So what I'm gonna do is unbolt these 2 sides of the bracket, and I'll make a vertical cut straight down on both pieces, bolt the bottom half back on, and this piece I'm gonna spin it and figure out where it needs to sit. It's gonna be upside down so the hole will be closer to the bottom, and wherever it needs to sit to get the right height, I'll tack it back in place. And that way I should maintain the same distance out from the frame and just be able to manipulate the height. All right, I got my tabs cut down to size. I cut them together so they match, make it a little bit easier on me. Now these are going to mount upside down, like so. And I made a mark on the flat side that lines up with the center of my hole. So I just need that mark to be 5 7/8 inches off the table. And I'm also going to make a mark on my piece that's bolted to the frame at 5 7/8 inches. And so now, all I need to do is line those 2 marks up, and I can put a tack on it. All right, we got everything tacked up on the brackets. I need to unbolt them so I can put a full weld on them without welding so close to the engine. And I'll also cut this extra little bit off the top. Once we get that done, we'll bolt them back up and we should be able to just mount the hood. Fingers crossed. All right, here's the moment of truth. We should be able to just mount this up and fold it back over. All right. Oh, that is just perfect. Goodness gracious. Couldn't have asked for better. It's still a little bit too close for my comfort up here. So I think what I'm gonna do is just trim this turn stop down so it's not as tall, and then it won't interfere with the plastic. All right, everything's just about perfect, but I noticed when I turn the steering wheel all the way, we get into the hood right here. So I'm gonna mark a little bit of that and I'll just cut it out so we have clearance for our tires to turn. And then we'll be done with that part. See. That is fantastic. We got full clearance. Everything's great. All right, we got our console finished up and we got our hood on. That's not too bad. That's gonna do it for today. If you like what you see, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Give me a comment down below if you got something on your mind. Otherwise, subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.
Well, that's not bad.